They took it back to Berchtesgaden, which you can see the diagram here has an underground labyrinth of hidden systems and caves and bunkers and everything else. But it probably did not remain there. It was taken out of Germany on something called Aktion Adlerflut, or Operation Eagle Flight. This was instigated in August of 1944 by the head of the German Central Bank and the head of the IG Farben Combine and Martin Bormann, who by that time was running the show. Hitler was pretty much over the edge with megalomania, plus all the drugs that he was being fed. These guys took the combined wealth of Europe that they had looted, plus Solomon's treasure, and they created 750 corporations all around the world. Their connecting banks were the Bank of International Settlements, the Deutsche Bank, which today is still a powerhouse in the financial world, Chase Bank, which later became Chase Manhattan, and I particularly want you to notice Union Banking Corporation. Because in 1942, one of the chief stockholders of the Union Banking Corporation was prosecuted in this country by the Justice Department under the Trading with the Enemies Act, and they accused him of being nothing but a financial front man for Hitler and the Nazis. And that man was Prescott Bush, and also his father-in-law, George Herbert Walker. So when you hear people say that these people running the country today are a bunch of neo-Nazis, I want you to stand up and say that is not so. There's nothing neo about them. They're the real old Nazis. And the attorneys for the Schroeder Bank, which was one of the chief connecting banking operations, was a law firm in New York, Sullivan and Cromwell, and their leading attorneys who worked with the Nazis was John Foster Dulles and Allen Dulles. John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State under Eisenhower, the guy that brought us the Vietnam War, and Allen Dulles, of course, who was one of the longest running CIA directors, who then sat on the Warren Commission to determine what happened to John Kennedy. All roads lead back to Sumer. You hear about the Babylonian civilization, the Akkadian civilization, etc., etc. These were nothing more than just de-evolution of the original Sumerian civilization, and I'm not going to bore you with that, although if we could get the graphic back up, you might want to notice that in this ancient stele up here, circled in red, this dates back about 3,000 or 4,000 years before the Bible was ever written down, and it correctly shows the size and placement of the planets in the solar system. How'd they know that? Well, of course, we know how they know that. I'm not going to get into this. This is Sitchin's material. Others are now finding this out. 425,000 years ago, the Anunnaki came to Earth. And we know this because it was written down in ancient tablets that are still in existence. But where are they? Most of them are in Iraq, the one place you can't go. And we'll skim through this. You know, most of you know the story of the Anunnaki, okay, and how that there was wars broke out between them. We also know that they claimed that they took a primitive Earth female, shall we call her Lucy, and they manipulated her DNA, did some genetic engineering, and came up with a worker race, which I think goes far to explain the absence of the missing link. There is no missing link. He had Neanderthal, and then his DNA genetic makeup was tweaked, and then you had Cro-Magnon, modern man. We could go into the similarities of the names and the writings, but let's rush on through. It's also interesting that the ancient Sumerian tablets also give the exact same account of the biblical flood, with the only notable exception. There's two notable exceptions. One is that, of course, in the Bible, his name is Noah, and in the ancient Sumerian tablets, his name is Utnapishtim or something like that. The one thing I find that's a little bit different too, but really brought a light bulb over my head, I had always had trouble with this idea of two of every animals on board this ship. But I did figure out where they went to the bathroom. On the poop deck. No, that's terrible. But I never really could figure out. They got lions and tigers and sheep and goats, and they're all there side by side. How could that work? Well, in the ancient Sumerian tablets, it doesn't say they took 2 of every animal. It says they took the seed of every living thing. Whoops, hello. Now I see instead of a boatload of animals, you've got one little closet on board this ark that has DNA tissue in it. And they can reconstruct all of the, and you know that's going on right now? Do you know that they are storing away DNA tissue on plants, animals, everything on this planet. So if there is some sort of huge cataclysm, that they hopefully can rebuild everything. Now, what's also interesting to me is that how many of y'all are like Celtic music and all this good stuff? Yeah, it's kind of a fad right now. Are you aware that the Celts and the Druids did not originate in the British Isles? They migrated from Iraq, Mesopotamia. In fact, there were 2 mass migrations. One went up through the Caucasus Mountains, came in through Eastern Europe, ended up over in the British Isles. They were known as the Druids. And the primitive people who were there worshipped them because they had knowledge, they knew things, they knew how to do things. And of course the other came into Egypt, and from Egypt to Greece, from Greece to the Romans, and then on into the Western civilization. In fact, the whole history of Western civilization has been one constant movement to the West. And when Europe filled up and the British Isles filled up, then they came to America and the East Coast filled up. And during the 1800s, it was one mass migration from the East Coast to the West Coast. And why? Why do these people keep moving? Historians, it's no mystery. They all admit why. To escape religious and political tyranny. In other words, somebody's been trying to get hold of us all of this time, but we're like trying to grab mercury or something. You know, you're trying to grab it, well, move. Move some more. But you know what, folks? We got a problem. There's no place else to move. And now they've got technology. And they know where everybody is. So here's just a brief rundown. You can see that you start with the ancient Sumeria, and you can trace the knowledge and the attempt to control humanity right on up. And it's all the same thing. The pharaohs, the Caesars, the royalty of Europe, Hitler. What were they concerned with? The bloodline and the interbred. And they wanted to maintain the purity of the blood. There's something about that, and it tracks all the way back. So now, if we assume that these ancient tablets are telling us the truth, and that these spacefaring aliens landed on the planet all these thousands of years ago, then that begs the question. Did they all leave? Or did they all, or at least a portion of them, stay behind? It's an either-or thing. They either all left, or some of them, or all of them stayed behind. So which is it? I think we can find the answer. And we find the answer by looking at the historical record. If they all left, the whole written history of mankind should be just one unending, gradual evolution up to civilization. You know, hunter-gatherers to city-states to nations and all like that, with nothing in the record to show that there's anything strange or unusual going on. But that's not what we find, is it? Quite the contrary. The historical record gives us the answer. This is the great Los Angeles air raid. If you look closely, you can see the saucer caught in the searchlights. Got pictures of saucers over the desert. You got an ancient French coin from the 1600s that shows a giant wheel-shaped object floating over the countryside. You've got alien autopsy. You've got the triangles. You've got a Billy Mayer picture over here in the crop circles, and of course the occult that's been with us all the time, which is just strangeness that nobody knew how else to explain. And of course, all of the sightings of UFOs, cattle mutilations, the whole thing. Somebody's still here. But if they're still here, then what's going on? I feel like there's 3 possibilities, because we have clearly established that there is a small ruling elite that wants to rule the world. And we've also established that these ancient astronauts apparently are still around, at least some of them are. So this leads to three possibilities. Either the ruling elite are trying to contact these ancient creators, or number two, they've already contacted these ancient creators and are being controlled or guided by them, or number three, they are the ancient creators, the ancient serpent kings of legend, the ones who have been trying to corral and control humanity from the get-go. And now they're getting close to realizing this because now they have the technology to do it.